G'day viewers, I'm going to introduce Josh Holmes, latest member to the SLH fishing team. We're going to show you his great Adventure Island.
Thanks Scott. Yep, the Adventure Island, definitely my favourite boat. I've lost count of how many of these things that I've rigged together for customers. This is the third one I've put together for myself. I reckon it's definitely the best. I call it bird of prey because it flies like a bird, it hunts fish, and it looks like a Klingon starship. The first modification we made was to make a more reliable seal for the bow hatch, getting creative with the existing bungee cords and adding cleats a few inches up from the hatch. Underneath the hatch we glued a piece of closed cell foam to give the lower seal something to press into. I often use the bow for fish storage, utilising a 120 litre heavy duty dry bag which I store underneath the hatch. The bag is big enough to store plenty of fish and prevents blood and slime from contaminating the kayak. We modified the furling system so that it is operated from the port side of the boat. This involved adding a few pulley blocks to route the furling line to the port side gunwale. Now the furling line isn't fed into the Mirage drive well, but rather onto the portside tramp, where it isn't in the way of anything. Furling the sail is still nice and smooth, and the starboard side is now a little less busy. We also customised the Mainsheet system to make it smoother to operate by adding blocks at key points to reduce friction and prevent the Mainsheet line from drooping into the water and fouling onto the Mirage drive fins. In an effort to simplify operation of the Mainsheet, we replaced the crossbar cleat with a fair lead and added a swivel cam cleat in front of the starboard pocket. This allows me to operate the Mainsheet without having to lean forward and feeds the Mainsheet line straight into the starboard pocket. This makes it easier to keep the deck tidier than it would be otherwise. We made a few small changes to the Tramp to tighten it up and prevent it from sagging under load. This was achieved by adding a downhaul line to each side. Using a medium-sized figure 9 cleat to secure the downhaul lines, it's possible to pull the Tramp tighter than the stock webbings and buckles will allow. The last modification we made to the Tramp was to add a bungee cord at the tail end by feeding through the buckle webbing loops. This can be handy for securing items to the Tramp from the dagger board through to fish that are too big to fit anywhere else. Underneath the centre hatch we added a small waterproof Unknow Box, which is where I typically store a few go-to lures. I also use a deep gear bucket in this hatch, which is where I store any lures that have been used. We ran several experiments on emergency bilge removal, settling on a manual system that would allow me to remove water from inside the hull without having to open the hatch. To this end we installed a large drain plug into the smaller portside drink holder. In the event of emergency, it's simply a matter of removing the drain plug and inserting a modified bilge pump and then pumping water out of the hull. Although I still use a standard backrest whenever I use the island as a kayak, I've otherwise found that a boating style skipper seat is a lot more comfortable for longer trips. It's higher and drier and helps to prevent monkey butt from setting in. Fitting the skipper seat is a fairly simple affair, requiring the addition of a couple of pad eyes on the bulkhead to anchor the seat, as well as jam cleats installed onto both the port and starboard side gunwales next to the seat to secure its position. I shoot a lot of video when fishing from the Adventure Island, with at least 2 GoPro cams mounted at all times. The primary camera is mounted up front using a 150mm Railblazer camera boom. It's easily installed into a starport that I've screwed onto the front deck. This gives a great perspective for frontal video shots. I also have a starport mounted to the portside ucker, which I sometimes use for sideways viewing perspectives. To achieve a rear viewing perspective, I mounted a starport to a Pro Angler grab bar that we fitted to the back of the rear storage well. I've mounted a digital depth finder to the front deck. This does a good job of telling me how deep the water is, which is really all I need to know. This is powered by a 9 amp hour battery installed into a Hobie battery holder, which I placed into the rear hatch for optimal weight distribution. Hobie rod extenders are utilised in the flush moulded rod holders. I use these for storage of inactive rods. However, I've customised these with an integrated bungee leash that allows for maximum stretch with minimum overhang. This minimises the amount of cord lying around to prevent it from getting tangled up with other gear. For active fishing, I use what I call a bullhorn rod holder, which I designed for trawling 2 rods in the Adventure Island. Among other qualities that I was aiming for here, first and foremost, I wanted a rock solid rod holder that wouldn't buckle under a solid bite like most of the other rod holders I've tried, like this one. It's a one-piece contraption put together using PVC tubing incorporating modified ram tubes, spectra cord, snap clips and small figure 9 cleats. Because it's secured at 4 points, it's as solid as a rock. Its fully hollow design allows for a proper fit for any size rod and is optimally positioned for trawling. Here's how I go about installing it. When it comes to fishing from the Adventure Island, a tidy deck is a good deck.